Hi. So, I just want to talk about something. It's something related to how we seek out patterns so we can recreate the same scenario, or how we subconsciously seek to repeat the same patterns. What comes to mind is when people say, we just have chemistry. Okay. So, like, you just meet someone and the chemistry is just so strong. And I've got a couple of situations where I could say that, oh, the chemistry was good. But something happened that got me relooking or looking at it again to see what's happening. So, here's the story. I met this guy online, and I just kind of like him. Okay, usually it's just a picture, they we chit chat, but the chit chat was straightforward. I'm kind of a straightforward kind of person, so the chit chat was like straightforward conversations, and so it was my thing. Then we exchanged numbers, and we had some WhatsApp conversations, and it's not like the conversations were great. It's about it's being straightforward. And by straightforward, I mean to some extent blunt, just direct. But that's the way I talk, and that's the way I like to hold conversations. So it was okay with me. And then we moved further to have a phone call, and we had this phone call. The phone call was on an evening when I was relaxing at home. I had a glass of Bailey's. I call it Bailey's. So it's cream liquor, but usually my glass is heavily diluted with ice. So not much alcohol in it and all that. But I'm at home. I'm relaxing. I've got a glass of Bailey's, lots of ice in it, and I'm having this phone call with this guy. And I just keep laughing, and I was really chatty laughing. And I remember telling him, oh gosh, you're making me laugh so much. And he's like, what did I say there? What's so funny? And I'm like, no, nothing. And I was just laughing. Really, nothing was really funny. And but I was just we just connected in that way. Why I mentioned the alcohol was I think I mentioned I was drinking, and so he said maybe it's your bottle, but I don't think it was my bottle. It's the same feeling I got when we were chit chatting, texting, and it's the same thing when we had this call. So I told him, I was all giggling, laughing, and I think it's easy to say it's chemistry. That was what it felt like. But it's the fact that I'm very much of a logical person, and there was no logic for this chemistry. There was no logic for the clicks. Yes, he was having very direct, blunt conversations, which I kind of find very okay. It makes me feel like the other person is being truthful. However, there's nothing really funny that got me really giggling and laughing. But I was that relaxed with this person, and then we exchanged a couple of pictures, and then we started talking about meeting, and we agreed on meeting somewhere between both of our houses. So he was going to do some travel, I was going to do some travel, and we were going to meet. The whole conversation so far has been us laughing, giggling, basically me laughing and giggling. Okay. Even aside from that, and then we fix a date to meet, and then for some reason, which I can't remember now, I couldn't make the travel to his end. So he was trying to travel towards my end. And then there was train strikes, and then he had to use a bus, and then he had to come really close to my end. And eventually I'm like, you know what? He could actually come towards my house and we'll meet up. And then I wasn't ready before the time. So I was late, and I'm like, okay, you're not really far from my house. You could actually come to my house. So he ended up coming to my house. And I live in a flat, a block of apartments. So look through the window, he's there, and I'm smiling, laughing. By the way, that's first meeting, right? Okay. And I went out to meet this guy because I tried describing my flat number or how to get to my flat, and he was like, hey, come out. And so I came out, went to the lift, and we were walking towards my room when I said to myself, stop smiling, you're not seeing this guy again. This is the last time you're seeing this guy and you're not seeing him again. Okay. So I missed out a couple of information. Now, there were a couple of things I noticed because I'm just the kind of person who ruminates in my head a lot. So I'm asking myself, why am I giggling? Why am I smiling? Why, And I begin to try to look for the pattern. What's causing this? What really is this? He's a tall guy. He's a really tall guy, some 6 feet tall. I'm like 5'1" or 5'2". So he's a tall guy, and he's huge. I weigh women for roughly 5 years working in antenatal unit, so I can literally look at a person and tell what kg they were likely to weigh on a scale, and the guy would easily weigh 120 on a scale. He's that tall, he's that big. I'm not that into that big, basically because I feel like I'm always working on my weight, and I like to know the other person is also working on their weight. And if I can't see evidence of it, I'm not that into the person. So that was the first thing I saw as off. So I felt like, okay, I can see that as off. Why am I still giggling? He practiced a different religion from me, and I would like to marry within my religion. And he was very serious. He's looking to find someone and get married and settle down. I'm in the same phase. So he doesn't practice my religion, and I want somebody that practices my religion. So that's another reason to not go ahead with the chats or the calls or the meetings. But it made no difference. I was giggling. I think I spoke to him about exercise. I wasn't asking, I think I didn't ask him directly what he did for exercise. I asked him, or I informed him that I go to the gym occasionally, not very regular. I do some swimming, I'm still learning. And he kind of assumed that's me asking him what he does for his own routine. Not really. People like to ask me what's my hobby, and I don't have much of a hobby, so I try to tell them what I do with my free time. And so that was what I was doing in that case. But he assumed I was asking him about his own routine for exercise. I think that's just a self-conscious thing because he's big. And so he said, oh, I do nothing. I stay at home and I work in my house. And I giggled about that. But even though I recognized it as him saying, no, I'm not doing exercise. So he gave me all the no's. That's what I'm trying to point out. And I remember when I met him downstairs when he came to my house. Initially, I didn't want him to come. He insisted. I didn't have issue with him. Remember, I was laughing and giggling with him, even though I had a principle of not having a first or a second date in my house. It all went to the windows. Like, I threw it out. I was giggling and laughing. I was happy and chemistry, wherever you want to call it. When I went downstairs to meet him, I realized there's no nice way to say it. He's got a body odor. It made no difference. I was giggling and laughing. I think he tried to peck me or something. I could tell his breath was bad also. It made no difference. I was giggling and laughing. So on this day now, I wasn't sipping alcohol, right? So The alcohol was not the excuse, but I was still giggling and laughing. But as we walked towards my room and he was in my front, I said to myself, there's only one reason why you're so comfortable, you're giggling, you're laughing. This is a guy that you would not marry. You know it. There is that click somewhere in your subconsciousness that says he's not. And so automatically he's not a threat, because I had grown up with a great sense of phobia for marriage. And even though I desired it, my phobia was real. And so subconsciously I already perceived this guy as no threat, because I'm not going to marry him. So let's waste our time together. And so that's the trigger for the giggling and laughing. And that's what someone else would refer to as chemistry. So in this case, yes, it was probably my trauma. It was probably my pattern seeking. It was probably whatever was going on, self-sabotage. A lot of names could be put on it, but it wasn't chemistry. It wasn't love. It wasn't attraction. It was more of a subconscious programming that said, this is safe. Let's do this. We could waste another 6 months on this. We could waste another 1 year on this. It wouldn't go anywhere. Don't worry. You're safe. You're fine. And yes, I trusted his person to some extent. I didn't see the threat of him coming to my house. Even though he's 6 feet tall, I could tell from the pictures, when we exchanged pictures, I could tell that he was a real tall person, and I could tell that he was a really big person because I could see his shoulder. Even though they weren't full pictures, he didn't send me full pictures, but I could see his shoulder, I could see his sitting among other people, and I could tell that he was a really tall guy, and I could tell he was really big, but I didn't feel threatened. I felt relaxed, I felt excited. It's something close to attraction, but I knew myself too well to know this was not attraction. This was self-sabotage and play. And so as I walked with him back to my room, I said to myself, Chloe, you're not seeing this guy a second time. I don't care what happens, but you're not seeing a second time. I don't have the time to waste on this, and you just want to waste my time. So when they say we seek patterns so we can repeat the same history, the same events, it's the fact that a lot of it can be very subconscious. Some 10 years before that incident, I wouldn't have seen it. I would have been happy. I would have said I was attracted to the guy because I like tall guys or whatever. I would have found an excuse to say I was attracted or he's funny. He wasn't funny, by the way. I would have looked for an excuse to justify how I feel. But I'd grown over the years, and I'd come to know myself, and I'd come to see my own self-sabotage. I'd come to recognize it enough that I said to myself, you know what, you're not seeing him a second time. And yeah, I didn't see him a second time. I didn't. It was an okay evening. We sat down, we talked, we watched some movies, we tried to discuss the future because he wanted to discuss that topic. I tried to be as amicable as possible. I knew I wasn't going to see him a second time. It wasn't because of anything he did or didn't do. It was because of the fact that I knew this isn't what I want long term, and I wasn't interested in wasting my own time. And I think that's an example of maybe how we seek patterns and how we subconsciously program ourselves to repeat the same patterns. Thank you.